In this lesson, let's take a look at the GPU acceleration mode. So far, we have only worked with the CPU mode. To turn on the GPU option, let's open the V-Ray Asset Editor and switch to the Settings tab. Then, in the Renderer section, simply click on GPU to switch to that render mode. The difference between GPU and CPU is that GPU rendering allows you to perform ray tracing calculations using the graphics card installed in your system. Ray tracing is a very intensive process that performs massive amounts of parallel calculations in order to simulate realistic lighting in a 3D scene. GPUs have an advantage in that they are specifically designed to process massively parallel tasks, so depending on your GPU, it's possible to significantly speed up your render results. Just like CPU rendering, GPU rendering offers both interactive and progressive modes that you can choose between, depending on your scene's specific needs. You can also choose which GPU device you want to use for your render by clicking on the three dots next to the GPU toggle. By default, all graphics cards installed on your system will be enabled. For our scene, I'm going to leave it on the default setting. Now, let's go ahead and start the interactive render. Let's also take a look at the GPU settings by flying out this menu to the right. Under Ray Trace, you will find an interactivity slider. By default, it is set all the way to the right, which improves the interactivity in interactive mode. Moving the slider to the left increases the number of rays that are traced for each pixel during each image pass. This makes the image smoother from the start of rendering, but the interactivity becomes significantly slower. You can see in the frame buffer how much more time the image takes to clear up. Now, let's move the slider all the way back to the right and see how this affects the interactivity. Notice how the image clears up much faster. Let's go ahead and stop the interactive render now. Next, let's disable the interactive mode, which will automatically switch us to the progressive mode. Just like rendering on the CPU, the GPU progressive render mode has a quality slider that you can use to control the quality of the render result. If you move the quality slider to the left, you will notice that the noise limit value located under Ray Trace increases, producing more noise in your final render. Moving the slider to the right will decrease the noise limit, producing a much cleaner final image. While you may prefer to have noise-free renders, you should be aware that the lower the noise limit, the longer the render time. Now, let's expand the global illumination menu and try dragging the quality slider left and right again. Notice how the global illumination settings change automatically to adjust for the desired quality level. Okay, let's go ahead and set our scene up for a final render. First, we need to change one final setting so that we have a high-quality render result. Under the Ray Trace section, notice that we have two options to choose from: noise limit and time limit in minutes. Noise limit lets you determine the desired noise level for the final render. This means that depending on the noise limit number we have set, V-Ray will finish rendering only when that noise limit has been reached. The lower the noise limit, the higher the quality will be. On the other hand, if the render time is a more important factor for your considerations, then you can opt for the time limit setting instead. Check this box to set the maximum duration of time in minutes that V-Ray should spend rendering the scene, unless it reaches the noise limit level first. Let's enable the time limit checkbox, and where it says 5, set it to 10 minutes. You can either drag the slider to the right, or just type 10 in the field here. V-Ray will now take no more than 10 minutes to complete the render. Meanwhile, let's also slide the noise level to the left to its lowest value, for the highest quality and least amount of noise. Next, under the global illumination section, let's set both the primary and secondary global illumination engines to brute force. Now that we are ready, let's start the render. You can take a 10-minute break and then come back to check out the results. And now after 10 minutes, we have our final render. If you want an even higher quality render, you can also increase the time limit value significantly, or even turn it off, and let V-Ray do its job overnight.